So the question now is, how do we define a better system? And these four folks are going to help us. So quickly, Bob Lenz, Envision Schools, one of the leaders. Shale Polikos Surrency. When I got to New York, said, you got to meet this guy. He's one of the smartest men in New York City. And that says a lot. This is not one of those Cal, Stanford things. I mean, you know, New York City is what you guys should be aspiring to. Ooh, ooh. Ash I don't know, is it Vasudeva? Vasudeva is a senior program officer at the Gates Foundation. Is going to talk about the Math Literacy Design Collaborative. The Gates Foundation has fingers in a lot of places. They get blasted, but I think if you look at the record, they support a lot of very, very interesting and positive things. Diane Ravitch might not agree. And Ray Pachon, who is from Scale and PACT, who is a master of acronyms, although he's Stanford, he's going to talk to us about Ohio. Now the rules are simple. They get 9 minutes. There's a gatekeeper here. I'm going to be sitting right here. They get 9 minutes and then the gong rings. So let's go right to it. And Bob, you're first. As I say, what we're exploring here is models of what can work.
We began Envision Schools 8 years ago, trying to think forward.
What would happen if you got in your car and never looked ahead through the windshield? Instead, you just drove where you needed to go by watching your rearview mirror. That's kind of how we assess students in our schools today. We're always looking backward. What did you learn? Repeat it back to me. But how does that prepare students for what lies ahead of them? Times when they'll need critical thinking or creative problem solving or collaboration skills. To be honest, it's just not enough. We're asking them to drive forward by looking back. We can do better than that. Imagine assessing a student's performance by looking forward at what they're capable of, like researching a topic, testing a hypothesis, or building an original argument. Think of how that different focus could prepare them for all the challenges they'll face beyond high school in a world that's constantly evolving. It's a pretty tremendous shift, brought about by changing what we measure. It's eyes forward assessment, focused on what's to come.
So we founded Envision Schools, just like the topic of this panel, is to show what's possible. So we're a charter management organization, nonprofit. We use the opportunity to be charter schools for the innovation. My work previously was in a suburban middle class school where people saw this type of work and said, this is great, but it would never work for the kids that we teach. And we just didn't believe it. And so we went about creating Envision Schools to show that wasn't true. A small system of schools that's defying those odds. Recently, we've launched a new division called Envision Learning Partners so that we can take the promise of charter schools to be laboratories of innovation to move those innovations out to the broader public school system. We're doing it because we're starting to get results that show that our students are outperforming their peers in the districts we are, in their college readiness, and in their persistence. So we track our kids closely through their first year of college. We know that of the 90% of our kids that are going to college, 70% are going to a four-year college, and over 90% of those students over the last 4 years have re-enrolled into college in the second year. In the state of California, the average is 76%. That's for all kids, not predominantly low-income kids. We think we get these results because we subscribe to a balanced assessment. So we think it's important that kids be able to, just like that continuum we saw in the packet, the kids can demonstrate their knowledge and their mastery of knowledge, and our traditional assessments do a great job of that. But we also want to see what they can do. Can they demonstrate their understanding, apply that understanding, use skills? Most importantly, we believe they have to do the metacognitive process of reflecting on their learning. Every performance task that we're going to show you culminates in a reflective summary. We also believe that it's important to teach and assess what we call 21st century leadership skills. They're the deeper learning skills, 21st century skills, scan skills, great skills. They're really important. We do it through a system of, we call our college ready student assessment system, or college success assessment system. It culminates in a college success portfolio in defense. Working with Scale 8 years ago, we created frameworks that outline the necessary outcomes for mastering deep content knowledge and the skills of the discipline. Recently this summer, we worked and took those and we aligned them to the Common Core. So our students are asked to work towards mastery from the time they're in 9th grade to graduate, to have master inquiry, research, analysis, and creative expression, as well as those 21st century leadership skills, the 4 C's that I showed you before. We have a set of rubrics that are standard across the system within every school and in every classroom. These are just a little piece of what one of the rubrics would look like for English language and textual analysis. So we've systematized the rigorous expectations of college readiness through these rubrics. The teachers don't create these, they use these. We all calibrate around it. It comes together in a benchmark in the 10th grade, and in the 12th grade, a defense, where they have a cover letter, an arrangement of mastery work. It's really important they understand this is mastery work, not a work in progress. They have a career-focused artifact. In our case, it's an internship. And they have to defend this in a dissertation style. And they're also assessed on their deeper learning skills or 21st century skills. The piece that you read, many of you, on the campaign ad was done by a student at Envision Schools. And Alexis we're going to show a brief clip of his performance assessment defense using that piece.
My name is Alexis Villalobos. I am a senior. Some of my interests include acting, theater, visual arts, and ASB, which is the Associated Student Body, the student government at school. Some goals I have for the next 4 years are to study abroad, work with theater, and become an influential advocate for my community, which in a way I'm doing today by advocating for project-based learning and performance assessment. And something I forgot to include there is that next year I'll be attending St. Mary's College of California, which is a 4-year private liberal arts school, and I'll be the first in my family to attend a 4-year college. I'll only be presenting that through my literary analysis project, which was my campaign essay that I wrote in the 12th grade this year in both my world literature and my AP government class. So just to give you some context on this project, since you guys weren't there with me, it was a project from both my world literature class and my AP government class that I wrote during the rhetoric unit of World Lit and the elections unit of AP government. Throughout high school, we read and analyzed a lot of different texts and works of literature like Shakespeare, Kindred, Life of Pi, other poems and lyrics, and did analysis on those works. But for this specific project, we were asked to analyze an actual ongoing campaign for the 2010 California election. And so what we analyzed were TV ads and radio spots and print media in order to use analysis to identify the rhetorical strategies that were being used by that campaign. And then we had to use our knowledge of rhetoric and what we learned in World Lit in order to evaluate the effectiveness of those rhetorical strategies. So we got to say our opinion on whether or not it worked, whether or not it was a good idea to use that strategy or not, based on who the audience was, who the voters were, and what message was being delivered. So to connect back to my thesis and prove that my writing skills have developed through this project, I was able to use creative writing. For example, in this first paragraph, I used a metaphor instead.
So I think you get a sense of what the defense looks like, and also I wanted to get to that piece where you saw he was taking the piece of work and using that as evidence of his mastery of both the content and the skills. So we use this evidence we're training the students to do it, and we're really excited about a new tool that's coming out that we're partnering with, Show Evidence, which is a web-based tool which will allow teachers and school districts and networks to author and share these tasks. They'll be delivered web-based to students to perform it, and then teachers to be able to assess that online, tagging the evidence. I think Ray's going to take you a little bit deeper into it in his presentation. You get the results back, and then you can share it as a portfolio. So I'm going to quickly roll through some slides here. You can see what screenshots will look like. You can actually see what a rubric score would look like and the reflection piece. So I'm supposed to stop, but we don't have any students here, and I have one more short clip of 1 minute of Tiana. It'll be really quick, I promise.
I finished the notes for the oil spill lab that you gave me earlier. So I think everything should be done in terms of that. To be quite honest, this has been the hardest thing I've had to do my high school career. The graduation portfolio defense process has really taken a toll on me, in a good way though, not in a bad way. This is an amazing process that I feel that every student needs to experience.
Tiana, congratulations, you're fast.
Thank you, Bob.
That's why we
Yeah.
That's why we do it.
Morning, everyone. My name is Surrency. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the New York City Department of Education. As I talk today, I want to share a little bit about how do you start to do this work at scale in a system that is both large and also largely unfamiliar with doing this kind of educational work in classrooms. And so I think probably for practitioners in the room, folks at the district and state level, where you don't have a base of folks who are really skilled at this, I'm hoping that some of the things that we've been struggling with and learning could be useful as lessons. Just to give you a little context about New York City, we have 1.1 million students, which if you put them all in a city, we'd knock San Jose off the 10th largest city in the country, and 75,000 teachers. So the scale is different to anywhere else in the country, but that's an advantage and a disadvantage. There's tremendous talent and diversity, and also tremendous challenges that come with that kind of scale. New York is also slightly different to California in that it's focused through a different assessment consortia, but also the PARC consortia has many of the same performance tasks in its plan. And so as we've begun this work, we've taken the introduction of the Common Core and the prospect of new assessments in the 2014-15 school year as a teachable moment, as an opportunity to take advantage of a new conversation that we can start with principals and teachers in schools about how do we strengthen and improve the quality of what's going on day to day in the classroom. And if you really think about it, that's actually the only thing that a school system should be thinking about. It's that daily practice in the classroom and whether or not you can support that and strengthen the quality of that matters. And if you aren't supporting that, then you're ultimately moving in the wrong direction. So here's a complicated slide that shows at the top states shift towards these summative assessments in 2014, and we're at Race to the Top states, so there are some resources that have come in for that. And at the bottom, you see some of the things that we've started to do, and I'm going to go through in this conversation and share some of those steps. 2014, as someone earlier said, is not far off, but it's also not tomorrow. And so there is time to prepare, and there is time to do some work. And that's really what the focus has been for us. And we started last year. We're now in our second year of doing this work with our teachers and students. This past spring, we launched a resource that's publicly available. If you have your computer hooked up now, you can check it out. It's at schools.nyc.gov. If you go and click on academics, you'll see the Common Core library there. And this is something that we have made available for all of our staff and parents, but also for educators around the country about the work that we've started to do. And I'm going to dig in and show you some examples from there in just a second. The other thing that we thought a lot about is how do you begin to make this shift? And it's complicated. And there's always, when something new comes in education, a desire to flip like that. And it generates tremendous cynicism for teachers in the classroom. And so part of this is, how do we take advantage of this teachable moment and not rush it too much? And so we decided to start with a manageable step. And what we asked every school to do and every teacher to do is to expose kids to one literacy task and one math task this year embedded in a curriculum unit. And so for somewhere between 2 and 6 weeks out of this school year, every kid is going to be exposed to a curriculum unit that culminates in one of these richer and more authentic performance tasks. And it's an opportunity to start the process. Because as you saw in that timeline, the real change in our state exams don't come till 2014, 2015. So there's a risk in this interim. We need to prepare, but kids are still taking the same exams they've been taking that are not aligned to the Common Core. And so for teachers, that's schizophrenic. And if you ask people to do the shift all at once, and you're holding them accountable for an old set of standards, that's really tough. So we're doing it gradually, and we ask people to take on one project in their classrooms as a way to learn about what has to change in what you do as a teacher, what kinds of skills do kids start to develop in that process, what kinds of things have to change in the structure of our schools. And as we go through that process, we're learning a lot. So here's one of the key resources we've developed for our staff. We had 100 schools in a pilot last year where teachers collaborated with organizations like Scale and others from around the country to develop a set of sample units that culminate in performance tasks. So on that Common Core library that I mentioned, you'll see 26 of these sample units, one for each grade level in literacy and math. And on those instructional bundles, you'll see a performance task, the rubric, annotated student work that are samples of what our kids did last year at different performance levels. So teachers can actually use it to gauge where their kids are in reference to this. And then adaptions for special ed and English language learners. And very importantly, a curriculum outline that goes with it. And these bundles were developed by teachers. And so they are very concrete resources that have been tried and have worked in classrooms with the support of some of these external partners. And the reason we created that tool is because we know that there's a range of development in our schools. Some teachers are doing this kind of work already, and they know how to do it, and they just need something that they can reference, say, okay, the thing I'm creating looks like this. Others are going to want to take something and just do it, that they have never done this before. And then there'll be people in the middle that want to adapt some of these tools that we're creating. And we want all of those folks to have an access point into this work. And so we've been really clear about this is going to be different in different schools. And people need to take this at different paces. And some schools are going to go slower than other schools. We've set up a structure where we have networks that support groups of 25 schools. Each network has several achievement coaches who are folks who are instructional experts who work with schools. Each one has 6 to 7 schools. That's actually more than we've had in the past. It's less instructional support outside of the classroom than many districts and CMOs have, but it's what we can afford right now. And what those folks do is they go into schools at least once a week and work with the leadership team in that school who are driving the instructional changes at the school level to develop a strategy for capacity building. Now, we believe deeply that you can't do this work by pulling teachers out of schools into big halls like this one and talking at them and teaching them how to do it. You actually need to do it embedded in the school as much as possible. Most of our instructional talent is in our schools, and so we need to leverage that talent. And so those achievement coaches are there to help schools strategize, plan, provide support for this transition, and then connect them to outside resources when they need it in a customized way. And so different schools are pulling in different ways on the district and our partners in order to get the supports that they need. And inside schools, as folks work on this, teachers are meeting in teams, They are looking at samples of their own students' work, asking the question, how close are kids to meeting these standards? And they're finding a big gap. And then they're asking the question, well, how do we design something that's going to start to move our students? Trying these sample units, taking a look again at the student work, asking the question again, is this good enough? How good is good enough? And then going through a cycle of revision on their curriculum. And that process then gets very quickly into what are the pedagogical shifts? What are the changes that teachers need to make in their classroom in order to do this work well? And that's a tricky part of this. And so we've started to do, from our pilots, 37 learning sites that are designed intentionally to go deeper as models, as places where we can bring people to take a look and really look closely at what is it that has to change, not just in the curriculum, but in how people teach. Some key lessons learned, and I'll wrap up here on this slide. Communicating about this is complex. It's very easy for folks to be confused. You need to differentiate support within and across schools. Make sure that there are supports built in from the beginning, not as an afterthought for kids who are special ed or English language learners. There has to be a balance between direction and autonomy for schools. If this is all coming top down, then it becomes a compliance exercise for schools. The more that you can embed these new types of assessments in curriculum, the better. It's not useful just to give a task and say to teachers, go figure out how to write the curriculum to go with it, but actually putting the two together is critical. And then ensuring that there's real time in the school day for teachers to meet in teams and learn about their practice and figure out how to strengthen it, because this is about changing their practice ultimately. And then creating situations within schools and across schools about how you norm the quality of what you're seeing, both in terms of the teacher work as well as the student work. And that's the hard part that we're just now getting to, because as we start to do this, it's much harder than it seems when you sort of lay it out in a PowerPoint, and it's going to take a long time to get to the point where actually you start to see the quality of work that you're after. Thank you.